one of the things that churches often overlook is the value of the second-time guest and getting people to not just come to your church, but to want to stay at your church. We're talking about that and more today on the Must Increase podcast. Welcome to the Must Increase podcast, where we equip you to communicate your message, reach more people, and ultimately increase His name through your church. I am your host, Luke Clayton, and I'm joined by the producer of the podcast, Mr. Bo Snyder, and for the second or third time on our podcast, Matt Lecron, who is our graphic designer here at Must Increase. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back for the second time. Third time. Yeah. For the record, it's been 3 times. And then, of course, Bo, it's good to have you here with us as well. You know, you always see me and Bo.
Always good. Guy. Yeah, it's a little different here setup. This is
it is. Well, we're having to sit all like close because we have to get in the same shot. And speaking of which, if you've been watching us on YouTube, thank you. And if you're not, check us out on YouTube. We put all our episodes out on YouTube now, which reminds me that we'd love if you subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening to podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button below, and that way you'll get notified whenever we put out new content. So today we are talking about, we're getting into the holiday season, and depending on when you define when the holiday season start.
Right now.
Been in it for, yeah, sure. Matt?
I think the holiday season is October.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Just because, like, even though it's not a massive holiday in October, I just love October. But we're obviously past that now. So now we're officially like, okay, people can start listening to Christmas music, and I'm not that mad at them. I mean, it's a little early, Matt, but
never too early.
The holidays are in the air, for sure.
For real, Matt. I met Matt in, what was it? Well, it was June was like kind of when May or June's kind of when you started.
Oh, yeah.
And, he was jamming out to Christmas music even back then.
That was late for last year. Now I'm listening early for this year.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, some people are weird, but but we are into the holiday season. Thanksgiving's coming up soon. Of course, then you run into Christmas, and we've already been talking about how Christmas is a huge, so obvious, but it can't be overstated how huge of an opportunity it is to reach people that have never been to your church before. So many people are going to be looking for a church, somewhere to attend church during this time of year. And so we wanted to take an episode and kind of talk about, how can you make the most of this holiday season from the perspective of your marketing and media? And we're going to kind of focus in, if you look at our 7 levels, we're kind of focusing in on levels 4 and 5, which is define your message and enhance your look. This is a great time of year to really be honing in on those levels.
Well, if you take a step back, we've just come through times of harvest festivals, and usually churches do something that are special in the fall.
Something harvest, yeah.
Right, and we're getting into that season where obviously we want people to visit our church, and we want guests any time of year, obviously. But when you get to the Christmas season, you can go to the bank. They're going to be first-time visitors. People are going to show up. So it's just that time. We talked about it's pretty much Easter and Christmas. They're going to show up. So how can we? I had a hard time giving this episode a title. I think I finally said maximizing the holidays, but it's just that time. What can we do? Because we know we're going to have a chance to show kind of what our church has to offer when it comes to everything. But how can we use media, marketing, outreach to say, hey, this is the time of year we're really going to take advantage of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't started thinking about it by now is the time. Really, it's such a huge time of year that, in my opinion, it really calls for weeks and months of preparation leading up to it. But if you're just now starting to think about it, it's not too late. And I do want to plug this, something that we've released here not too long ago, our Christmas film packages. And so if you head over to ChurchMediaHQ.com, you can see what we're offering this year. We've partnered with Drew Shetler, who we'll be talking to here in just a few weeks about those film packages. And there's 3 different film options. And what these aren't just films. A lot of people are like, well, that's nice, it's a video. It's much more than that. It is a full package of content for you to use in your Christmas services. And so that right there, that concept of just doing something a little bit out of the ordinary, a little bit different, a little bit special through something like presenting a film or some type of production can really make a strong impact on people during the season. So I did want to take a moment to mention that those are available now at ChurchMediaHQ.com. Well, Matt, let's get you chatting here a little bit. And I think, Bo, you're kind of going to navigate us through this conversation.
Well, yeah, I'm going to try. And this is what my thoughts were, is first impressions are huge. Mm-hmm. And I actually shared this article with you the other day. It's so many people, we put an emphasis on first-time visitors. Mm-hmm. And that's great. First-time visitors are great. But this article said what's more important is second-time visitors. Obviously, something happened while they were there at church that said, hey, I want to come back. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing, because when it comes to churches, there's usually a lot of choices. But when we can make someone feel, wow, this was an experience, this was well done, they want to come back. So when it comes to whether it's before, as in we're going to market a big day, we're going to do something that day that's like extra. What is a couple things, and this is very, very open-ended, obviously. What is a couple things that come to your guys' mind when you know, hey, someone's going to be here for the first time? What are some things that we know we're going to do, or we're going to try to put a little effort into this right up front?
Matt, I'll let you lead this one.
Well, look, I want to let you lead this one first, see where you go with it.
I'll lead this one. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well, okay. Well, I can start on this one since, Matt, it's all right. Only your third time on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm a beginner.
Getting kind of warming up to the mic here.
Yep.
Well, like I said, and I know I don't want to be too repetitive, but something that is really emphasized, because you talk about the difference between a first-time guest and a second-time guest. Anyone who's going to come to your church is important. Anybody who's going to visit for the first or second time is important. But that's why a lot of times, and this is, you can apply this to anything, not just church, but a lot of times in marketing, we get really focused on, if you will, getting people and not necessarily on keeping people. And so I think that's why you've really got to consider, yes, the marketing and what I'm doing to get people there, the promotion, the advertisement, but you've got to consider, what am I doing during the actual service to keep people, to present value to them? And I think a lot of your messaging and a lot of your look as far as your visual media plays a huge role in that. And so obviously this is just really practical. And a lot of times we give these tips on what you need to be doing on special Sundays, but really I think you should apply a lot of this into play just any given week at your church. But this is the time to, if you haven't been doing it, really put a lot of beforehand thinking and preparation into something like your graphics. So, for example, if your pastor is preaching through a series or a standalone sermon, this would be a good time of year to make sure that you've got visual aid in form of slides, putting his main thoughts up on the screens. This would be a really good time of year to really start implementing that, because you're going to have a lot of new people that come in and they're hearing your pastor preach and they're hearing him, say these things. And, of course they say, if you hear it and then you see it, there's more of a chance that you are going to remember it and that it's going to be meaningful to you. And Matt, I know you've done a lot of work with designing different sermon series slides and things like that. So I don't know if you have any thoughts to pitch in there on on that, or just the graphics in general.
Well, I would talk about first, like you mentioned, before someone comes to the church, they're going to check out your Instagram feed, you're going to check out Facebook, and, we like to put things on there that says, we're a friendly church and we want to help you meet Jesus. And they come to the church, and sometimes churches will have people holding signs that says, we want to meet you, let's sit by you, like, you're awesome. And then you get to the church, and, I've just visited a few churches coming here to the South, and there's about a church on every corner. So we've visited a few coming. Yeah. And I've been in big churches, small churches, medium churches, and everyone is nervous. Whether you're new, whether you've been there for years, everyone is nervous. And so even if you've been there for 15 years, that new person, for some reason, is still intimidating you. But that new person is also intimidated of you. So I've realized, you just got to go up and meet people. And I think if your website and your social media is saying how great of a church you are, how friendly you are, how you want to help them meet Jesus, be consistent in the lobby as well as online, where if you see that person, go up to them and greet them. I mean, it will help a visitor feel more at ease. I don't like line up and scare them to death, but
Here's the thing. I found this, once again, I'm going back to the same article. It said, if somebody comes to your church, you have to realize they want to come back.
Yeah.
They actually do. They are not going to your church. They're not wasting a Sunday morning and hoping it doesn't work out.
Yeah. They're looking for a reason to come
They
back.
are looking for reasons to say, this is a good, safe place for my family. I like it. I feel comfortable. So if it doesn't take that much to convince someone. And I'm thinking of a church when I lived in Virginia. I went to this brand new church, didn't know anybody there, and there was one person that reached out to me, and I kind of had a connection with him. And then the next week, I went back because I knew that one person. Yeah. And when I went there, I looked for that guy. I know one guy. Where's he at? And then that's what I'm saying. It's crazy how people, you don't have to do that much to make something stand out to people. It just takes a little bit.
Well, something I heard one time, a quote from anonymous source, not sure who said it, but what you win them with is what you keep them with. And the problem is that, like what you were saying, Matt, a lot of times we're working really, really hard to win someone. And when they actually get there, come through the doors, they are not finding that same persona that we conveyed in maybe our advertisement.
Yeah.
And they're saying, oh, well, this is what brought me here was the fact that you advertised that you were, that you were hospitable, that you were caring. And then now that I'm here, I'm not really getting that vibe. And so I'm not going to
especially the second time.
Yes.
I mean, the first time is kind of easy.
Yeah.
Second, third time, that's when people are like, is that guy new?
Well, and one of the things that I've heard put before, once again, not original to us, to our thought, but is that even comes down to the way that you refer to people who are guests at your church. You know, a lot of times we hear that term guest or visitor, but, a lot of times people, they don't want to be necessarily singled out by saying, oh, they're a guest, make sure you run over and shake their hand and all that stuff. But they also do want to be at least recognized in a way that, hey, yeah, I'm new here. So a lot of good times when we try to do this and when we work with messaging is we just use the term, you're new to our church. You're new. Yeah. So, hey, I'm new. Does that mean I'm a first-time guest, a second-time guest, a third-time guest, or I've been coming for a few months? If you want to identify as new, however you define that, that's okay. And this is, so I think that mindset shift will really help in saying, hey, we want to reach new people. Not necessarily we want to reach first-time guests or even first and second-time guests. We want to reach new people and make an impact on people that are new. So you're constantly, like I said, because I know what you're talking about, Matt. Some churches you walk into first time, oh, they're all over you. I mean, they are just, hey, let me get you to a map of the campus, and let me give you a tour, and let me make sure your kids get to where they need to go. And then the second week you walk in, and it's like, well, you did this last week. You should figure it out.
And then they forget about you. Okay, well, check this out. We say the word marketing a lot. Yeah. Some people probably get sick of us saying that word, but this is something that's wild about marketing. Marketing is an ongoing thing. Yeah. Marketing isn't a one-time advertisement. If you go on somebody's Facebook or Instagram or whatever, or website, and you say, oh man, they're a certain way there. Yeah. But then if you go into church and everything is completely different, you're obviously not being consistent with your marketing. Because, once again, people get tired of hearing this, but it's true. What people are experiencing during your service, that is marketing every single minute of the service, because that is what you are. That is the vibe you're giving off is what our church is. So I say all that to say, if you can be consistent, I think that's huge. Anything to add there?
Well, yeah, because I've heard people say, well, we don't really do marketing. I was like, you are.
You sure? Yeah, everybody does.
I think the best definition of marketing I've ever heard, and I'm sure we've said it before, is the management of perception. Right. You are just managing what people perceive of you. Whether if they perceive of you as accurate or inaccurate, your job is still to help them perceive you correctly and perceive what you're all about. So yeah, like you're saying, Bo, if they walk in and they're like, oh, I perceived this completely different, and the reality is not at all how I thought it was. Now that can have good, they can think, oh, this is better than I thought it was. But I'm talking about in a negative context, like, oh, well, I thought they were going to be this and they're not. And, sure. And so, that's a great point. That marketing is an ongoing thing. It doesn't just stop when you get them to walk through the door. It continues as you continue to build a relationship with them.
Right. Matt, something for you. We've given a couple things that we should do. We should be consistent. We should give off. We should be give those first reaches out to people, what are some things when it comes to big days that we should not do? Something that is very common, or sometimes we just, oh, it's just a regular day. What is something that definitely don't do this when you got a big day coming up? You know there's going to be people there. When it comes to the marketing, the outreach, what are some things stay away from?
Well, I've been in a lot of churches, like I said, and the one thing that a lot of churches do is, and it's natural, is to say, hey, we're having a big day and you should come to it because it's our big day. It's almost like a 5-year-old saying, hey, I'm having a birthday party. I want everyone to come. It comes off very self-centered. Yeah. And I think I know why they do that. Obviously we value the church. And when we're saying, hey, the church is having a big day, we're not really thinking of ourselves personally. We're thinking of the church that God, established. So I see why they do it, but it comes off as, hey, they think they are all that in a bag of chips and we should go over there. Mm-hmm. So whether it's Christmas or Easter, or some churches they call something like open house, all of your marketing material, your tracts, your brochures, your social media posts should not, it sounds weird, but should not be about your big day. Like, it should be about how that quote unquote big day is going to help that person. And obviously as Christians, like, we know, we want them to come and we're going to present them the gospel. And I worked in a larger church, and sometimes we want to hide the fact that we want to present the gospel to them, like this bait and switch thing. Yeah. And people are not getting fooled. They know that. And so the best thing to do is just be completely transparent and open. I would recommend not calling it open house, just because open house has this connotation of, hey, come in and look at us because we're so amazing. And you don't want that. We talked about playing the guide in that person's story. Yeah. How can we show them, hey, we empathize with you, we know what you need, and you could talk about your day, like your Christmas musical, but it should always be in reflection of how it helps them. Yep. Hey, we want to introduce you to Jesus Christ, who came to this earth and was born of a virgin, right? And so messaging on your brochure, on your Instagram, should be completely 100% about the person you're reaching, less about yourself. Still put your time, your day, all that. They need to know that. But what is predominant on your social media post should be value to them.
I was going to say the buzzword, value. Yep. They got to see value to what's going on.
Well, we've got these different elements of story, and there's a lot of different ones, but we kind of teach them, and we kind of say the four C's. So you've got character, you've got conflict, you've got the conclusion, and then you've got the compelling call to action. And a lot of times it's as simple as this. Don't position, like Matt said, you need to be playing you are guiding the character, which is the person you're trying to reach. You're guiding them through these elements, and you're just guiding them. And really, when it comes to your event, a lot of times you want to position your event as that character, like it's all about, like you said, it's just like saying, I'm having a birthday party, and it makes it seem like it's all about you. Here's just a small change you can do. Make that event, just change that to be, well, that's actually going to be our call to action, is attend this Sunday. Come see us. Come to our Christmas service. Come to whatever special day we're having. But you're crafting a story. The character, the conflict, the conclusion is all about the person you're trying to reach. And then you're saying, hey, your next step, if you want this favorable outcome, if you want the conflict to be resolved with this favorable conclusion, your call to action, your next step, come see us on this big day.
One thing I'll say about the call to action, it's one of the things that you see in a story. But one thing that we can fail to do is we have a flyer and it says, Christmas musical, date, time, location. And we assume that the person reading that flyer already knows the call to action. Yeah. Oh, they already know we want them to come. Yep. And we never say in there, hey, if you need help with this or want this, come to our Christmas musical. So I think on your promotional pieces, you need to say, here's the next step. Yep. Come at this time. Yep.
And I'll add to that, just one next step. Don't say hey, come to our church and then be sure to come back for this to get baptized, and then be sure to come. And honestly, we see that a lot is people get this idea that they just need to load if it's their website or their printed materials, they need to load it full of information. But really, that's confusing. that you're going to lose people. People are going to they're going to look at that. They're going to literally be overwhelmed, and they need to just know, hey, like I said, you're walking them through that story. You're putting that at the center of it. Then they just need to know one simple call to action, one step to take in order to get connected with you.
Well, that reminds me. I've had requests. Churches in the fall will have 4 or 5 different activities. And to save money, they'll have a 8.5 by 5.5 flyer, and they'll want all the events as a grid on the front, and they're all designed. And I understand of saving money, but a good tool like what you mentioned is think of the value that these events are going to provide for the person behind that door, and then talk about that value, whether it's meeting your community or meeting a church that cares about you. And to meet this church that cares about you, here's some events you can attend. That's a way better message than, hey, we're having 4 birthday parties just for me. Come to my 4 birthday parties. So
no, that's a great point. And it all comes down to your church has to add value. Yeah, you have to communicate how you're going to add value to their lives.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to. If you're preaching the message of Jesus, you're preaching the gospel, you're going to add value to their lives, but the way they perceive it in your marketing is not always the case. So you've got to make sure they understand that.
I was just about to ask this question as we begin to wrap up here, but you just kind of said it in a nutshell. Is if you guys were to sit down with any pastor, any church leader, and over this next holiday season you're going to have X amount of visitors come into your church, what is the one goal that you have for every person that comes in? Not necessarily a goal for your church, but a goal for that person. When they come into my church, they've obviously given up their Sunday. Something has brought them here, whether it's they've seen something, someone has invited them. When they leave, what is something that you want to stick with them, something that you want them to take home and kind of spread or just believe, I guess, when it comes to your marketing, your outreach, your church, just the goal for pastors to have for that person?
Yeah. Matt, you got an answer to this?
Well, one thing I was thinking is, a lot of times we think, we need to give them the gospel because it's important. And again, that's going back to we promote our church so much because we think, hey, that's God's church and we want to promote it. So it's the gospel. It's God's gift to all mankind. The value is, it is the gospel, but it's what the gospel brings to that person. So if that person is coming to your church and maybe they're going through, something that happened in their life that's really big, we know the gospel, Jesus Christ, will help them. But I think we need to present to them, whether it's a one-on-one conversation or a brochure or a next step brochure, we want to share the gospel with you because we know that Jesus Christ will help you in that specific area. And you got to talk to the person, obviously more than a couple of minutes for them to be comfortable with you, but find out, why they came to that church, and then, don't just shove the gospel down right away. Well, give them the reason why the gospel is valuable to them,
And I think like you said, Bo, the one takeaway that if I'm working with someone, they're new to the church, they walk in for the first time, I want them to go home with one thought. And it really sums up everything we've talked about. That one thought that I want them to have is, I want to go back. Yeah. I want to, because like I said, Matt, the gospel is so important. And, but there's a lot of times where the gospel's presented and it goes over their head. Yeah. They don't understand it, or it could be something as simple as they get distracted during the time that it's presented, or they don't understand, they don't hear. And so, we wanted them, if they accepted Christ that day, awesome. If they didn't, either way, we want their mentality to be, I want to go back. Because if you accepted Christ, you want to go back so you can grow in Christ. If you didn't, you want to go back so you can learn a little bit more about what this is all about and how it's going to provide value to me.
I think my thought is right in the middle of the road is if I want someone to go home, I want them to leave saying that church does things with excellence. Mm-hmm. Just the way they presented their service, the way it just the order of service, just everything that I saw, everything that I heard is just an excellent example, an excellent presentation of the gospel. And obviously, if you do that, whether they get saved or they don't, something will stick with them that says, there's something about that place that has run so well, it is so good, I want to go back.
Yeah. I think it's just great to have that mentality of, hey, we're glad to have people, we're glad to get them, but we want to keep them. And so you just realize a few takeaways that marketing, it never stops. Yep. Just because they came through the door doesn't mean you have to stop marketing to them. And ultimately, your goal is to get them to have that desire. Man, they do things right. They have something special about them. I want to go back to that church. Well, hey, Matt, thanks for being with us today. It's been good to have you with us.
It's fun.
Bo, it's always good to have you as always. I'd like to give a shout out to our associate producer, Jonas Clayton, who helps us produce these episodes. And thank you for joining us right here on the Must Increase podcast, where we equip you to communicate your message, reach more people, and ultimately increase his name through your church.